I'm not supposed to be here.
Too late to turn back.
A nurse. A billionaire. One wrong train. When Naomi Blake realized the luxury train she boarded wasn't heading to D.C., the man beside her smiled and said, "Too late to turn back." He was right. That one mistake changed everything. That morning, she'd promised her sister she'd take a break. Just one weekend to rest, to breathe. She had no idea that rest would mean sitting across from Alexander Hayes, the reclusive billionaire who hadn't smiled in years. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. Naomi's voice caught. She cleared her throat and started again. "I'm not supposed to be here." Alexander Hartley's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those sharp eyes. Interest? Maybe. Or amusement? Obviously, he said, lowering the phone he'd been holding. The question is whether you're lost, delusional, or something more interesting. Lost, the word tumbled out. "I was texting my sister, and I thought this was the 10:47 to Hartford, and she gestured helplessly at the opulent space around them. "This is very much not the 10:47 to Hartford." He almost smiled. Almost. "No, it's not." The conductor appeared in the doorway, looking deeply uncomfortable. "Mr. Hartley, I sincerely apologize. She must have slipped past during the supply loading. We're already outside city limits." "Where is this train going?" Naomi asked, though part of her wasn't sure she wanted the answer. "Savannah," the conductor said. "Private charter, non-stop." "Savannah? Georgia?" Her voice pitched higher. "I have a shift tomorrow morning. I can't. I need to get off." "We don't make unscheduled stops," the conductor began, but Alexander raised a hand. "Relax, Nurse Blake." His tone was unexpectedly calm, almost warm. "Consider it the world's strangest detour. We'll sort it out." She blinked at him. "How do you know I'm a nurse?" He gestured toward her collar, where her hospital ID still hung on its lanyard, half tucked beneath her coat. She'd forgotten to take it off again. "Right." She sank into the seat across from him without being invited, too stunned to maintain proper stranger etiquette. "This is insane." "A little bit, yes." As the conductor retreated, Naomi studied the man across from her. Now that her panic was ebbing, details emerged. The expensive simplicity of his clothes, the silver watch that probably cost more than her car, the way he held himself like someone accustomed to being listened to. "You're really Alexander Hartley," she said. "The Alexander Hartley. Hartley Medical Systems. You've heard of it. We use your surgical robots. The Da Vinci competitor. They're," she paused, "actually pretty revolutionary." High praise from someone who looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. "I'd rather be on the right train," she corrected. "But your robots are still good." This time, he definitely smiled. Through the window, city lights were already giving way to darkness, the urban sprawl dissolving into scattered suburbs and then open countryside. Naomi watched her escape routes literally disappearing and tried to remember how to breathe normally. A woman in a crisp blazer appeared, his assistant, presumably. She leaned close, whispering, "Sir, shall I arrange her exit at Savannah? I can have a return ticket and hotel." "No," Alexander said, his eyes still on Naomi. "Let her stay." The assistant hesitated, then nodded and withdrew. Naomi's heart performed an odd little skip. "Stay? Unless you have somewhere better to be." His expression was unreadable again, but something in his voice suggested challenge. "I'm curious, Nurse Blake. What kind of night does it take to make someone this distracted?" Outside, the last lights of New York faded into night. Morning arrived in shades of gold, spilling through the panoramic windows and turning the train car into something from a dream. Naomi had meant to stay awake. Anxiety and absurdity made strange bedfellows, but somewhere around 2 a.m., exhaustion had won. She woke to find a blanket draped over her shoulders and Alexander at the far end of the car, typing on a laptop. "Coffee's on the table," he said without looking up. "The assistant insists on protocols. I insisted on letting you sleep. Thank you." The words felt inadequate for the surreal kindness of the gesture. She wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the warmth ground her. "I can't believe I fell asleep on a stranger's private train. Technically, you crashed it. Sleeping seems minor by comparison. Was that humor? From the man Forbes called the Sphinx of Silicon Alley? As morning stretched toward afternoon, something unexpected happened. They talked. Really talked. It started with her apologizing again, spiraled into explaining about the hospital understaffed, overwhelmed, desperately trying to care for too many people with too few resources. She told him about her sister, about the treatment costs, about the impossible math of loving someone whose survival came with a price tag. Alexander listened with an intensity that made her self-conscious, like he was solving an equation only he could see. "You talk about them like they're your responsibility," he observed. "Your patients, your sister, the whole hospital, probably. Someone has to care. And who takes care of you?" The question caught her off guard. She deflected with a laugh. "Says the man who probably schedules his emotions between board meetings." His eyebrow arched. "I schedule everything. It's efficient. You talk like a really well-programmed robot. Do you know that?" Something shifted in his expression, surprise, then genuine amusement. "You're the first person to tease me in years. That's depressing." "It is, isn't it?" By evening, dinner appeared catered, elegant, nothing like the vending machine meals she usually inhaled between shifts. Through the windows, coastal marshes stretched endlessly, turning amber and rose as the sun began its descent. The world outside looked painted, unreal. "It's beautiful," Naomi breathed. "Yes," Alexander said quietly, but when she glanced over, he was looking at her. The train curved gently along the coast, and perhaps the track wasn't quite as smooth as it should have been, or perhaps the universe simply decided they'd maintained enough distance. Her wineglass tilted. She reached to catch it. The train jolted. She stumbled forward. His hand caught her wrist, quick, certain, surprisingly warm. They froze. Time did something strange, stretching thin like honey, like light, like the moment between lightning and thunder. His fingers on her pulse point. Her breath caught somewhere between her lungs and her lips. The sunset reflecting in his eyes, turning grey to amber. Neither of them moved. Outside, the world kept turning. Inside, everything had suddenly, irrevocably, shifted. The train sighed to a stop beneath a canopy of palm trees, their fronds casting dancing shadows across the platform. Through the window, Naomi glimpsed Art Deco architecture painted in pastels, heat shimmering off concrete, a world utterly foreign to the grey slush of Connecticut winters. "Well," she said, standing and gathering her coat, wrinkled now, still faintly smelling of the hospital. "Thank you for the strangest 24 hours of my life." Alexander rose with her, but didn't move toward the door. "Stay." "I'm sorry?" "Stay the weekend, in Miami." He said it like he was proposing a business merger, clinical and precise, but something uncertain flickered beneath. "There are storms rolling up the coast. Flights are delayed anyway, check your phone." She did. He was right. A red banner screamed about cancellations and weather advisories. "I'll book a hotel near the airport." "Don't be ridiculous." He was already texting someone. "I have a house here, several rooms. You'll barely notice I exist. That's not I can't just..." But even as she protested, exhaustion was making its case. The thought of navigating a strange city alone, finding a hotel, waiting in an airport for a flight that might not come. "Why are you doing this?" He looked at her then, really looked, and for once didn't hide behind that careful neutrality. "Because I don't want you to leave yet." The honesty of it stole her breath. "Okay," she heard herself say. "Okay." His house was a glass and steel villa, perched above the ocean like a modernist dream, all clean lines and impossible views. Naomi walked its halls barefoot, her shoes abandoned somewhere near the entrance, drawn by the rhythmic hum of waves against shore. "It's too much," she murmured, fingers trailing along cool glass walls. "It's beautiful and terrible and too much." Alexander stood in the doorway, jacket discarded, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the most casual she'd seen him. "Too much how?" Like looking directly at the sun, she pressed her palm flat against the window. "How do you live like this and stay human?" "Who says I do?" She turned, found him watching her with that same quiet fascination he'd worn since the train, like she was sunlight he was afraid to touch, warmth he'd forgotten how to hold. Outside, the sky darkened. The first drops of rain kissed the glass, then more, until the ocean view blurred into abstract watercolor. "Do you dance in storms?" Alexander asked suddenly, surprising them both. Naomi smiled, something loosening in her chest. "Only when I forget I'm tired." "And now?" She looked at him, this brilliant, lonely man who'd built empires and forgotten how to be teased, and felt the exhaustion of 1,000 shifts begin to lift. "Now," she said softly, "I think I'm forgetting." Thunder rumbled, the rain intensified, and neither of them looked away. The scent of Cuban coffee pulled Naomi from sleep, rich, dark, impossibly inviting. She padded downstairs in borrowed clothes. His assistant had somehow procured an entire wardrobe overnight. Following the aroma to find Alexander already dressed, already working, laptop glowing in the pearl-grey morning light. "Do you ever stop?" she asked. He glanced up. "Stopping is inefficient. Stopping is human." She crossed the terrace in 3 strides and closed his laptop with a gentle click. His eyes widened, shock, maybe indignation. "5 minutes," she said firmly. "Just be." For a heartbeat, she thought he might argue. Then something in his shoulders loosened, and he laughed, quiet, genuine, surprised by itself. "You're dangerously presumptuous, Nurse Blake. You're dangerously avoidant, Mr. Hartley." They sat with their coffee as the ocean performed its endless rhythm. The silence between them felt different now, not empty, but full of things neither quite knew how to say. "My mother died when I was 19, Naomi said finally, surprising herself. She never talked about this. Breast cancer. I was pre-med, barely holding it together, and I couldn't save her, couldn't fix it. That's when I knew I wanted to be a nurse instead. Doctors diagnose. Nurses stay." Alexander's fingers tightened around his cup. "And your sister? Same cancer, different outcome, I hope." She exhaled slowly. "The treatments are bankrupting her, but she's fighting. That's what we do. We fight." He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the horizon like it held answers. "I was engaged once," he said finally, each word careful, measured. "Claire. She was brilliant, an architect. She designed buildings that made you feel things. What happened? Car accident. 3 years ago." His voice was steady, but his knuckles were white. "I was supposed to meet her that night. I cancelled. Emergency board meeting. She drove home alone in the rain, and..." He stopped, started again. "I built an empire on precision and control, but I couldn't control the one thing that mattered." Naomi's heart cracked open. "Alexander, you heal people," he murmured, finally meeting her eyes. "Who heals you?" The question hung in the air between them, tender and raw. She thought of her sister's hospital room, of double shifts and donated plasma, of all the ways she'd learned to hold others together while quietly falling apart. "The ones who stay," she whispered. His gaze held hers, storm-grey and searingly honest. "I don't know how to stay. I only know how to work. Then learn." Thunder rolled across the water, sudden and deep. The lights flickered once, twice. Rain began to hammer the glass walls, turning the world beyond into watercolor chaos. And across the table, his hand moved slowly, deliberately, until his fingers brushed hers. Neither pulled away. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something else was beginning. The storm passed the way Florida storms do, sudden, violent, then gone, leaving the world scrubbed clean and shimmering. Alexander appeared on the terrace where Naomi stood, watching the sky clear, still wearing that borrowed silk shirt that was 3 sizes too big. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." That sounds ominous coming from a billionaire. "Trust me." She shouldn't. She barely knew him. But she followed anyway. His something turned out to be a yacht, sleek, white, impossibly elegant, waiting at a private marina. The captain nodded respectfully as Alexander helped Naomi aboard, his hand warm and steady at the small of her back. They cut through turquoise water toward the coral sea, Miami's skyline shrinking behind them into a glittering promise on the horizon. The sun emerged fully now, turning everything to gold and diamond light. "This is your Miami?" Naomi asked, leaning against the rail, wind catching her hair. "Part of it." He stood beside her, closer than necessary. "The part I actually like." She laughed, pure and unself-conscious, and the sound carried across the water like music. Alexander went very still beside her, and when she glanced over, his expression was unguarded, almost awed. "What? I haven't heard laughter like that in years," he said quietly. "Real laughter, not networking, not performance. Maybe you've been around the wrong people." "Definitely have been." The yacht swayed on a swell. Naomi's foot slipped on the wet deck. She stumbled and his arms were there, catching her, pulling her against his chest. They stood frozen, her hands pressed flat against his heartbeat, his breath stirring her hair. "I've got you," he murmured. "I know." Neither moved. The moment stretched, taut and trembling with possibility. Then the captain called something about dolphins off the port side, and the spell broke, but not completely. Never completely. That night, the villa glowed with candlelight. The electricity had returned, but Alexander had chosen flames instead, softer, kinder to confessions. They sat on the terrace as darkness pooled around them, talking until words began to fail, until silence became its own language. "I should probably check my phone," Naomi said, but didn't move. "My sister's texted 14 times. Tell her you're safe." "Am I?" He looked at her, then really looked, and she saw the answer in his eyes before he spoke it. "No, neither of us is safe anymore." The honesty of it made her tremble. "Alexander, you make silence feel like peace," he said softly. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Lightning flickered on the horizon, distant, beautiful. The space between them felt charged with the same electricity. He leaned forward. She didn't pull back. Their first kiss was soft, hesitant, a question asked with breath and warmth and trembling hope. His hand cradled her face like she was something precious, breakable. Her fingers curled into his shirt like an anchor. Beyond the glass, lightning split the sky. Inside, everything had irrevocably changed. The phone shattered the moment like dropped crystal. Naomi pulled back from Alexander's embrace, fumbling for the device, vibrating angrily against the glass table. Her sister's name flashed across the screen, but it wasn't her sister's number. It was the hospital. "Hello?" Her voice came out breathless, uncertain. Alexander watched her face change, watched warmth drain to ash, watched her spine go rigid with a fear he recognized too well. "When?" she asked. "How bad?" A pause. "I understand. I'm coming. Her voice cracked. "I'm coming now." She ended the call with shaking hands. "Naomi." Her counts dropped. "Sepsis." The words tumbled out clinical and cold, the only way she could say them without breaking. "They've got her on pressors. I have to go home. Now." He was already moving, phone in hand. "My jet's at the airfield. We can be wheels up in 30 minutes. I'll call my chief of oncology, the best infectious disease team." "Stop." He froze. "You can't buy my world, Alexander." She was crying now, angry tears, scared tears. "You can't throw money at this and make it better. This is my life, my mess, my... Let me help." "Why? Because we kissed? Because you feel something?" She grabbed her coat, her shoes, everything suddenly too small and too sharp. "You live in glass towers and private trains. I live in hospital waiting rooms and payment plans. We were pretending, and I forgot, and that was stupid." "Naomi." He caught her wrist, gentle, desperate. "This isn't pretending." She looked at him then, really looked, and saw something raw and terrified in his eyes. But she didn't have time to pass what billionaires felt when nurses had to catch trains and sisters were dying. "I have to go." "Then let me earn it," he whispered. "Your world, your trust, however long it takes." Her heart cracked clean through. He drove her to the station himself, the hired car sitting idle. They didn't speak. Words felt too small, too breakable. On the platform, as the northbound train hissed to a stop, Alexander pressed something into her palm, a silver pendant on a delicate chain. A stethoscope, perfect and tiny, catching the light. "For courage," he said quietly. "Yours, not mine." "Alexander, go save her." His thumb brushed her cheek, catching a tear. "And then come back, please." She kissed him once quick, salt-sweet, aching, then turned and ran. Through the window, as the train pulled away, she saw him standing perfectly still on the platform, hands in his pockets, watching her disappear. The pendant burned warm against her palm, and tears streaked the glass like rain. The fluorescent lights felt harsher than she remembered, cold, unforgiving, nothing like candlelight on water. Naomi moved through the ICU corridors with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, adjusting IVs, speaking softly to patients who couldn't always speak back. Her sister was stable. The sepsis had retreated under the assault of antibiotics and stubborn Riley genes. Emma slept more than she talked, but she was sleeping in a hospital bed instead of somewhere final, and that was everything. "You seem different," Emma murmured one afternoon, eyes half open, still weak but present. "Lighter, Maybe. I'm exhausted, Naomi deflected, smoothing the blanket. Exhausted people don't smile at nothing. Emma's lips quirked. You keep touching that necklace. Naomi's hand flew to the pendant she'd been unconsciously tracing the tiny stethoscope, remembering ocean spray and storm grey eyes, and the way he'd said, come back like a prayer. It's nothing. Liar. But Naomi just smiled and changed the subject. Her colleagues noticed too. Doctor. Patel cornered her by the nurse's station during a rare, quiet moment. Blake, you've been different since you got back from wherever you disappeared to. Family emergency. My sister. I know about your sister. I'm talking about you. He studied her with the clinical precision of someone who'd spent 30 years reading people. You're smiling more. Patients are requesting you specifically. Mrs. Chen said you made her feel hope. He paused. What happened? Naomi thought of a private train, a glass villa, a man who'd forgotten how to be teased until she'd reminded him. I got lost, she said finally, and then I got found. Dr. Patel nodded like that made perfect sense and walked away. She carried the secret flame carefully through her shifts, through medication rounds and chart updates, through the controlled chaos of an understaffed hospital doing its best with too little. But at night, alone in her apartment, she'd hold her phone and stare at Alexander's last text. How is she? She'd responded with updates, clinical, brief. He'd responded with questions, thoughtful, careful. Neither mentioned Miami. Neither mentioned the kiss that still burned on her lips like unfinished business. Neither said what they both felt. Evening shift, week 2. Naomi pushed through the hospital's main entrance, exhausted and ready for sleep. The parking lot stretched before her, mostly empty under sodium lights. A sleek silver car glided to a stop near the entrance, wrong, expensive, utterly out of place. She turned, froze. Alexander Hartley stood beside it, impossibly real in his tailored coat, holding a bouquet of white orchids like an offering. Their eyes met across the distance. I told you, he said quietly, taking a step forward. I'd visit your world. They walked. Not in a limousine, not with bodyguards hovering at a discreet distance. Just Alexander Hartley, billionaire, tech mogul, man who commanded empires, and Naomi Blake, nurse with worn sneakers and perpetual coffee stains, walking through Atlanta's streets like two ordinary people discovering their city for the first time. You're terrible at being incognito, Naomi teased, watching him study a food truck menu with the same intensity he probably brought to board meetings. I'm excellent at everything, he countered, then paused. What's a pupusa? You're yoking. I've eaten at Michelin-starred restaurants on 4 continents. Street food wasn't part of the curriculum. She ordered for them both, delighting in his surprised appreciation at the first bite. They ate standing up, grease on their fingers, laughing when he tried to use the napkin like fine linen. This is your world, he said, watching people stream past tired workers, late shift nurses, students cramming at bus stops. It's louder than mine. Louder how? More alive. He said it like a confession. I'd forgotten what that felt like. Meeting Emma was his idea. Naomi had tried to warn him hospitals weren't boardrooms, sisters recovering from sepsis weren't polite dinner guests. But he'd insisted, and now he sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair beside Emma's bed, listening to her tell embarrassing childhood stories about Naomi with genuine interest. She cried during every episode of ER, Emma was saying, grinning despite her pallor. Every single one. I was 12 and emotionally vulnerable, Naomi protested. You were soft, Emma corrected fondly. Still are. Alexander's hand found Naomi's beneath the blanket, squeezing gently. She squeezed back. Later, when Emma dozed off, he spoke quietly to the hospital administrator. Naomi didn't know, not then, that he'd arranged for the experimental treatment Emma's insurance had denied. Didn't know he'd anonymously funded the community clinic Naomi had mentioned wanting to start someday. He did it without fanfare, without headlines, because he was learning that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up, about crossing over. They stood outside the hospital as night deepened, the city humming its electric lullaby around them. In the distance, a freight train rumbled past, its lights streaking through the darkness like falling stars. Next time, Alexander said, watching the train disappear, promise me one thing. Naomi looked up at him, this impossible man, who'd stepped out of his glass tower to stand in her fluorescent world. What's that? His smile was soft, real, Nothing like the careful neutrality he wore for cameras. That you'll still take the wrong train if it leads to me. She laughed bright and full, the sound carrying over traffic and train whistles and the endless pulse of a city that never quite slept. Alexander Hartley, are you asking me to keep making mistakes? I'm asking you to keep finding me. He pulled her close, forehead resting against hers. However it happens, deal, she whispered. And as another train passed in the distance, its rhythm matching the beating of their hearts, two worlds became one track heading somewhere neither had planned, but both finally wanted to go. Thank you for watching to the end. I believe you enjoyed it. We have a lot of other interesting stories like this lined up for you already, so click the image showing on your screen to watch the next. Don't forget to subscribe.